devastating impacts. The Community Fund aligns with the work my ministry and the Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity are undertaking to develop an action plan to stop gender violence, including Budget 2022's $22 million to support sexual assault centres over the next 3 years. Government funding and support is vital to addressing violence. However, it is only through the meaningful participation of Indigenous communities and organizations that we can make the journey towards lasting reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. Now I'd like to welcome the BC Association of Aboriginal Friendship Centres, Leslie Varley, to tell us more about how the Community Fund is going to support communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ministers. BCAFC is very pleased to be selected to administer the Path Forward Community Funds. For many years, Indigenous women and girls have been targeted openly by serial killers and gangs preying on our colonial poverty. Where there are industrial work camps, we see high rates of violence against Indigenous women and girls. We see gangs targeting our young girls. We've lost many women and girls who should have been protected by Canadian society. We receive substandard service from the police and from the judicial system. We've long endured colonial mentality of Canadians whose unspoken belief is that we're not worth fighting for and not worth saving. After a federal inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and the provincial inquiry, this is a key opportunity for us as an Indigenous women-led organization to be administering anti-violence funds to Indigenous communities and organizations. Until now, we've had to go through mainstream organizations to protect and support our women and girls, and that clearly hasn't worked for us. BCAFC is collaborating with Battered Women's Support Services to develop frontline training for Indigenous women and girls to work in this field. This is a first step in developing our own province-wide capacity as Indigenous women for Indigenous women. BCAFC is collaborating with Aboriginal Housing Management Association, with BC Society for Transition Houses, and with Battered Women's Support Services to develop a network of Indigenous supports from town to town throughout BC, including information, counselling, discrete protections, and including safe houses, transition houses, and second stage housing, as well as prevention and intervention services and counselling services. Indigenous women who are interested in developing their culturally safe support skills should give us a call. I deeply thank the province for supporting Indigenous women to serve and support Indigenous women. This is an important first step towards reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I'd now like to introduce Barb Ward-Burkett, a longtime advocate for urban Aboriginal families. She is joining us virtually. Over to you, Barb, if all goes well with technology. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Minister Mark. Tanze dotimak nia wahia kuaptasko sagasquian. Hello, everyone. I'm joining you today virtually from the unceded ancestral territory of the Lheidli T'enneh. As the collective work leading to this new funding announcement of $5.34 million was unfolding, 4 core themes were identified as a path forward toward ending violence against women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ peoples. This initial work was led by Elaine Alec of Alder Hill Planning and Corporation in her planning sessions that were held in 2019 and 2021, and where there was identified need for safe spaces and safety plans, for healing supports, for strengthening relationships with our partners, and for access to resources. At that time, a number of challenges were identified through this process, such as funding and resources, that were identified as the greatest barrier: working in silos and cultural education burnout and engagement of ministers. It pleases me, and I'm so happy today that these challenges are starting to be addressed by the BC Minister of Public Safety and through ongoing dialogue with our federal counterparts. Today, an urban Indigenous organization, the BC Association of Friendship Centres, has been selected to support Indigenous community groups and organizations both on and off reserve, to bring Indigenous women and girls together in a safe environment, to give voice to issues of gender-based violence and abuse within their lives, their families and communities, as well as to heal and learn from life experiences that build resilience and strength through a lens of reconciliation and trauma-informed practices. Today, the voices of Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ peoples will be heard in the province of BC as we align our priorities leading to safety, support, healing, and decolonizing programs and practices. Thank you so much for the BC Association of Aboriginal Friendship Centres for stepping up to the plate as you always do, and for being in line to support this funding stream, and also to the province of British Columbia. Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That ends our formal remarks, but I guess I would add, as someone who's been a longtime advocate myself for missing women, Indigenous women in the community, as an Indigenous woman myself, I just want to acknowledge the hard work Barb is doing up in Prince George, which a lot of that advocacy with the Highway of Tears has been central to your work, and Leslie, to really acknowledge the place of urban Indigenous people in our province and being a safe haven for Indigenous people across this province. I want to acknowledge Elaine Alec for her work. She really facilitated the voices of community and heard loud and clear what government needed to do to move forward, to create that path forward. And it's a lot to endure, considering all the traumas that Indigenous women have and continue to face. So I want to acknowledge Elaine, who can't be with us today, and to thank her for her leadership, to giving government, Minister Farnworth, myself, and the rest of our cabinet a roadmap to move forward, to mitigate and end the violence against Indigenous women. And I know this fund was a call to action, so I especially want to thank the survivors, the family members, those that said to government, we need to see more action. And as Minister Farnworth said, nothing about us without us. So with that, thank you to everyone who made today possible, including the public service for facilitating this work. Hawa. And I will be passing it over to Minister Farnworth.
Questions?
Thank you, and now we're going to questions. Please press star 1 at any time and you will be placed in the queue. As a reminder, please unmute your phone as you will not be audible until your name is called. Our first question is from Binder Sajjan, CTV.
Hi there. This question is for Leslie. How will you know that these projects are a success, given the number of issues that you've outlined so far?
It's for Leslie. Sorry, it's okay. It's Benjamin. She asked for Leslie. Sorry, the first part was cut off.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Leslie. So I guess what I'm looking for is, like, how will you know that moving forward with this funding is a success and results in less Indigenous women and girls being impacted by violence?
Thanks for the question. Even the part where we get to administer funding to our own families and communities and projects to address violence, and to do it in our way, in acknowledging our experiences and our culture and working collaboratively, is a success in and of itself. This is a societal problem. It's not a problem that Indigenous women have created. So Canadian society is going to have to work with us to address the violence against women and girls. Thanks.
Binder, do you have a follow-up?
I do, and this one is for Minister Farnworth. Just on another topic, just wanted to ask you about the fire again. Just, do you have an estimate of how many people may be impacted at this time? And can you talk a little bit more about the supports available?
I don't have a significant amount of information at this point. What I can tell you is obviously that Vancouver Fire Department is on the scene. BC Housing has been notified. It is anticipated at this point that about 70 people have been impacted by the fire, but that's the latest information that I have.
Our next question is from Amy Smart, Canadian Press. Amy, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. Washington State created the first statewide alert system for missing Indigenous people, kind of like an Amber Alert. I'm just wondering if BC is considering something similar and what the thoughts are of the Indigenous women leaders here today.
Okay, could you repeat that question? It came in very, very quietly. I caught a bit about Amber Alert, but not much else.
Sure. I was just asking about Washington State has created an alert system for missing Indigenous people, similar to an Amber Alert. I'm wondering if BC is considering the same, and I'm also curious to hear whether some of the women leaders on this call would support that or have any concerns about it.
Certainly in terms of the Amber Alert that's used right now in British Columbia, it is our plan to have the broadcast intrusive alerting system, as it's referred to, in place for the freshet season and the wildfire season this year. The issue about an alert for missing Aboriginal and Indigenous women is something that certainly I would be willing to take a look at, and obviously would do that in consultation with First Nations.
You have a follow-up.
Yes, I actually do have a follow-up relating to the freshet. I'm wondering, given that many of the communities, including First Nation communities, are still in recovery mode, I've spoken with some people who say they haven't even exhaled enough to prepare for the spring thaw. How ready are we for the possibility for another disaster?
Well, I can tell you that prior to this press conference, I was just in a provincial territorial Indigenous Nations Committee meeting that the province and the federal government set up to deal with these very issues in terms of recovery and flood mitigation and preparedness and disasters in general. I can also tell you that my ministry and other cross ministries have been preparing for the freshet. Right now we are waiting on the latest update from the Weather Centre in terms of the conditions around the snowpack. One of the things obviously that will have an impact is the rate of thaw that takes place. While in many parts of the province the snowpack is either at or slightly above normal, there are other parts of the province where snowpack is below normal. So for example, in the Okanagan it is about 86%, it's about 109% in the coastal range, and then up in the Peace River Liard it was at about 143%. But one of the critical factors, of course, is what temperature does, and that's being monitored very closely, and I receive updates on that on a regular basis. At the same time, the repairs that were ongoing for or after the flood obviously continue, and so we are attempting to be as prepared as possible with local communities for the freshet system this spring.
That's all the questions that we have, and that concludes today's event. Thank you very much, everyone.